build and actually acquire their first set of users, or to advising accelerators and VCs in the portfolio companies. And so I've kind of seen the entire spectrum, and I've advised extensively across board, and I hope that within the next 60 minutes, I'll be able to share some of the nuggets, learnings, and perspectives that I've gleaned in that time with every single founder on this call. So that's me in a nutshell. And I think that segues nicely into Startup Bootcamp. Now I literally lead our growth initiatives at Startup Bootcamp. And as we all know, Startup Bootcamp is a global family of accelerator funds, operational across 19 cities globally. We're the #1 accelerator in Europe. And we literally see thousands of startups every year. I'm talking more than 20,000 startups every year across all our operations. And I'm based in London. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Okay, why don't we start off this session with the first simple question, which is, what is growth hacking?
Right. So typically when we talk about growth, and one of the intentions I had when we set up this call is to try to personalize it as much as possible for the founders on the call. And to that effect, I do want to just mention that founders, if you have questions or if there are aspects of a question that Danny asked that you'd like to extend or get a second perspective on, please feel free to jump in and let us know. But broadly speaking, when we think of growth and growth hacking, the right approach to think to use, or the right mindset, is to view this as a set of tools, techniques, and mindset, right, framework that you'd use to grow all the aspects of your business. So not just the users, but also all the metrics that matter, from users to revenue, to stickiness, to engagements, to retention, to adoption, basically growing across board. And we always begin, or we always ask founders to think from the first principles. So when you want to approach growth and you think of growth hack, what tends to happen is founders zero or just go down specifically to the tools because they focus on the hack aspects. But I want to say that the most important part of growth hack is really the mindset. So the real question you should ask yourself when you think about growth hack is, how does my company, how does my startup, how does my business grow? And once you start from that very simple question, you're basically in the middle of growth hacking. So yeah, that's, I think I'll leave it at that for now, because if I have to continue, there's going to be, I could talk for another 1 hour and not be done with fully explaining growth hacking.
Yeah, got it. Maybe we can then dive into what are some of the most effective growth hacking strategies that you've seen work for early stage startups?
Okay. Yes. So for very early stage startups, the best strategy you can apply to grow is really to understand your users and make sure that you're building what they want to begin with. And I know that's a little bit of a contradiction, because when we speak in terms of growth, a lot of founders want to hear the latest tactics that can help them increase the number of signups, or the number of installs, or the number of whatever vanity metric that is the shine of the day. But that's far from it. you have to make sure that the fundamentals, it's like building a skyscraper. And before you begin to build, you need to first figure out how deep you need your foundations to go and how you're going to actually cast that depth in, foundation wise. So that's exactly how it is here as well. The biggest strategy is basically how can I confirm and validate that I'm building what people want? How can I confirm and validate that what I'm building is a fit for the problems and the jobs to be done as expressed by these target markets that I'm trying to solve for? And then, of course, you begin that cycle of build, measure, learn, where as you begin to make the first steps of build, you're measuring, collecting data, validating, and then, of course, learning from that. And, using those learnings to then influence the next set of building activity or events that you undertake. And that cycle repeats itself over and over and over. So that's, in my opinion, the single, best strategy that you can adopt. And in terms of the next, well, I mean, I want to leave us with a few. So once you've sorted out the fundamentals and you know that you build in, or you at least have clarity on what the problem is, you've explored the problem in a lot of detail, you understand the problem as people see it, as you experience it, you understand the problem using the words that people, the language that people use to describe the problem, then you can begin to build upon a traction. And before the traction, the foundation of the traction and the traction framework is basically product market fit. So how do you establish that what you know about the problem, about how the problem is faced, about the jobs to be done and the problem and how they face it and the language they use, and your perspective on solution, how do you know that it's a fit, right? And for which part of your target audience is it a fit for? Because it would vary. So that understanding that, blocking those gaps, those are actually, as contradictory as it may sound, those are the best strategies to long-lasting growth. So you get those right, everything else can be built on top of it.
Yep, understood. So how can a startup with limited resources implement some of these growth hacking techniques?
Well, everything that I've explained now is actually pretty straightforward, and it doesn't require you to spend a dime. The simple way to validate at the very early stage is to get out of the building and talk to your customers. This doesn't cost money. All you have to do is come up with a script, a set of questions, go out there, call up your customers on the phone and interview them, or go visit them in the office, or if they are customers, if your customers are retail individuals, then find where they gather and go there and go talk to them. It could be that you meet up with them in events. It could be that you meet up with them in a school. It could be that you meet up with them in a gathering, whatever you need to do. Just go there and talk to them, right? This costs nothing, and you'd collect a ton of data, a ton of insights that would help you understand and build superior information around what the problem you're solving is, the jobs they're trying to get done, and the type of solution they're looking to hire to get those jobs done. So that would be my submission on that.
But how do you maintain sustainable growth after the initial spike from a successful growth hack from using these techniques?
Okay, so it's a very, I think the key word here, right, for everyone listening, the key word here is sustainable. And when you think in terms of sustainable, it means that you had the foundations right to begin with. So I'll give you a contrast to make this, to help this sink in a bit better. I've seen startups achieve growth doing really very much undesirable things. I've seen founders buy users. I've seen founders incentivize adoption. I've seen founders incentivize virality and use that to grow adoption. So what this does for you is it gives you a spike, a short-term spike, but it's not a reflection of anything. It doesn't last. So if you're incentivizing adoption, if you're incentivizing growth and signups, then when your budget for incentives, when it ends, that growth ends. That's not sustainable, right? And so across board, the only way that you actually grow without having to incentivize is to make sure that your understanding of the problem the customer faces is better, is higher than any other competitor in the market, such that when you and this is going to translate into the level of solution that you bring in, because your solution is also going to be orders of magnitude better than whatever else is in the market. So when you show up, it's a no-brainer. Adoption will follow. And it wouldn't be adoption that is spiky. It wouldn't be adoption that is wobbly. It wouldn't be incentivized adoption. It would be sustainable adoption. So that's how to think about it, and that's how to seed it and make it germinate and grow.
Thanks, Henry. I want to just remind everyone that they can, yes, thanks. So there's a message in the chat that you can put your questions in the chat, or you can unmute or raise your hand, and feel free to ask along the way. These first initial questions are to open up other questions and that you may have. So let's jump to the next one on my list, which is, what are some of the common mistakes that early stage startups make when trying to implement these strategies that you've talked about, Henry?
One of the biggest one, and I'm sure a lot of the founders on this call would probably resonate with what I'm about to say. One of the biggest one is basically trying to do so many things at once. So founders would think, if only I could do this and then do this and then do this and then do this and then do this, I will unlock the tap and we would grow. And that almost never works. I'll come to why that is in a bit. But another thing that founders also tend to do is to assume that if I build this sophisticated technology, users will come. So there's a solution mode thinking that a lot of founders are always in. So when you speak to founders, you'd notice that they're so stuck in their solution. It's like, I'm building this thing that is going to change the world, that is going to do this. It has the latest AI technology. It's powered by this and that, and it has blockchain, and it has the latest chain links, and it's like, it's all about solution, 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 solution. My team has built this, we've integrated this, we've done this. It's literally nobody gives a hoot about your solution. It's about what the problem they're facing is, the job they are trying to get done, and how they can borrow your products to get that job done for themselves. So the same way you're so stuck in yourself and in your solution and in how amazing your solution is the same way the average person is also stuck in their problem and its jobs they're trying to get done. And so usually, one of the first things we tend to do, and that's what I'm going to encourage all the founders on this call to think about and do, is get out of solution mode. Just unplug yourself from thinking in terms of solution, right? Don't even think about your solution at all. Just look at your customers, look at your users, and ask yourself, what is the problem? What do I know about the problem? Does my level of knowledge about the problem and the jobs you're trying to do supersede that of my competitors? And how can I know a lot more about the problem and the nature of the problem they face and the words that they use to describe these problems, and just become obsessed with the problem, right? Now, the point I mentioned earlier with regards to one of the mistakes, which is basically spreading yourself too thin, is something that happens a lot, and it's really contradictory. I don't know why it happens, but it's so common. You're a startup, you're very early stage, you have limited resources. So why do you think that you see founders have a plan for all the social media channels? They have a plan for SEO. They have a plan to get users. So on social media, they have a plan to get users on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Instagram. They want to run Facebook ads. They want to run WhatsApp ads. Then they have plans to do SEO, search engine optimization. Then they also want to build an email list. And it's like, it's a symptom of you not knowing enough about your users to begin with. That's why there's that maniacal running around, just trying to do everything and hoping that you can just compensate for that shortfall in knowledge with this scattergun approach to doing everything, and hope that if you're able to actually successfully do a lot and get a lot of volume, then yeah, you can just keep going and not have to face your fears and face the realities, which is that you haven't done enough to understand the problem and to understand your users as much as you should have. So I'd challenge every founder on this call, don't fall to that same hole that a lot of founders tend to find themselves in. When you're early, when you're starting, a better, simpler, more convenient, and usually more effective approach is to find that one channel. That one channel. When you're just starting, you don't have enough users. Because actually, sometimes I also have founders who would say, well, Henry, how can I go viral? I want to go viral. I want to set up like a virality campaign. So help me go viral. And it's like, well, if the possibility of you going viral based on, let's say, looking at the benchmarks of viral questions for your industry, it's very minimal. There's a baseline of users that you need to first get before going viral then becomes feasible. So you have to understand these things. And so to get to that first minimal baseline, you need to find that one channel that is a fit for what you've built on one end, and is also a very good gathering spot for those users whose problem you have become an expert in. Once you find this channel, don't be distracted. Don't chase anything else. Double down, go deep, and just squeeze out the juice on that channel. That's all you need to do.
Thanks, Henry. I'm wondering if you can see the chat. There were two questions from Philip. The first one was how do you measure churn? And then I think the next question was related to a previous answer you gave on would that help determine when you are in a sustainable growth stage?
Okay, so churn for everyone basically refers to the rate at which you lose users, right? And there's different ways that churn actually happens. So sometimes your users would actually help you know when they've churned. So if you have like an app, for instance, your users would uninstall your app, and you can see this if you have the most basic tracking tools, any of the app stores, you'll be able to see this. If your product is a subscription product, they'll stop paying, right? You'll be able to see this. If it's a subscription, not a paid subscription, but a free subscription, for instance, they could unsubscribe. You'll be able to see this as well. That's easy to track. The one that is a bit harder to track is the churn that you don't know of, that a lot of founders tend not to know of. It's the churn where they no longer use your service, but they're still there. The people who still have your app installed on their phone, but they don't use it for anything. They've literally churned, but the manifestation of churn hasn't happened yet. So now, irrespective of what is the situation is with you and the nature of the tracking or attribution system that you've implemented and the granularity of the data that you have, it's important that you measure these things. And I'm gonna eventually, hopefully, explain or talk a little bit more about retention. And hopefully maybe Danny's gonna ask me something around PMF or retention. So I'll get a chance to talk about that. But I think I'm gonna make some reference to it now. The most important measure of your understanding of your customer's problem, of your customer adopting your solution in a sustainable manner, is actually retention. And a critical component of retention is not just that your users stay, because they could stay but be dead, like zombie dead, right? They could have churned, but because the manifestation of churn hasn't happened, you think that that is retention. So retention that also shows stickiness and engagement. So you have to see that not only are they staying on, but you have to see that utilization is visible, it's there. They're using your service, and they're using your service for the purpose you've intended, which means your theory on their problem and how your service solves the problem for them is exactly how they're using it. They're using your solution to solve those problems for themselves. So absolutely critical. Now, is churn a way for you to determine when you're in a growth stage? Of course not. You know, the way to think about churn is a way for you to better measure your level of understanding of your customer's problem and how much your product is evolving to become a perfect fit for this market segments, your customers. Right now, churn can happen at any point in time in your product journey, in your startup's journey. So it's something that you need to keep an eye on. And there are baselines where you need to be concerned. But the goal is to drop churn to the lowest level. Now, at the very lowest levels, it shouldn't give you too much of a headache. But at all times, you must have full visibility into your churn. And you must, and it's important that, like I said earlier, you have that visibility on both sides, not just the one that is manifested, but the ones that are hidden, because those are the ones that kill startups faster. You think that you've got something, you think that you still have users, you have installs, but literally they've all churned. They just haven't manifested the churn. So those are things you need to put top of mind. I see a second question as well from Adia. It says, how can a startup grow if the final products become expensive? Well, we're going to talk about unit economics on this related to this question. And when you're very early, even though unit economics is not like the biggest priority when you're very, very early, it's absolutely important that you factor all of that in at that very early stage. Because, see, whatever you do, the biggest thing you want to put in mind is don't die. You need to survive and keep surviving. So it means that you need to have unit economics that make sense for you, make sense enough to support your growth as you begin to achieve a high level of fit with your customer segments. So as that happens and you see that adoption is happening, you should be able to support growth. You should be able to continue to serve them. So the point is, if you feel that if you raise, let's say that, for instance, you find that the final product is expensive, more expensive than your customers can afford, there's a problem. The problem is either you haven't established exactly what the problem is that your customers are facing and you're not solving it well enough, or you're solving a problem that is not such a big enough problem for your customers that they're not willing to go the extra mile or willing to actually go to the extreme to pay for it, or you need to do further work in your unit economics. But once you get the fundamentals right, like I said already, once you get the fundamentals right in terms of building what people want, so you validated the problem, you validated the jobs to be done, and you have brought that knowledge significantly to bear in the solution that you've brought to them and in how you've put the solution together, then it would be easy for you to actually make all the modifications you need to make on the unit economics aspects to actually then answer the next question, which is, can I build a sustainable business on the back of this solution that I'm offering, to this problem that I'm solving? So that's how to think about it. So if you're in a position where nothing you do, if you raise the price, you're likely to risk adoption or risk churn, then you don't have something sustainable. You need to go back and review again and figure out what's missing and fix it. Danny?
Okay. Cool. I don't see any other question in the chat yet, so we'll move on to the next one. What are the first steps for a startup to build a community of loyal users?
Right. Community.
Yes.
I think it boils down once again to, so let me just highlight a few things around building users. When you start to get deeper and clear on the problem that you're solving, the job that your customer segment, your audience is trying to do, and the outcome that they're optimizing for, that they want to achieve when they borrow your product to, solve that problem. As you begin to really get clear on that and understand that better, what will happen is you find that knowledge, that insight translates into you sharpening your persona. So the customer segment, the persona of your ideal customer becomes a bit sharper and clearer for you. And then as you go to the market, that knowledge as well translates into how you communicate your service, your positioning, the copy, the language, all of that basically comes to the fore from the knowledge that you've built, you've collected. Now, what tends to happen is you would find that even if everything you're saying resonates nicely with people, there's an inertia, there's that initial default to the known, to the familiar, that is likely to happen. And so you're likely to find that not everybody will, of course, respond and adopt. In studies across different industries, we found that between around 13 to 18% tend to be the number, the baseline for early adopters. So the way you want to look at it is the building blocks of your community would be on these early adopters. And your goal is to seek them out. Your goal is to go out boldly and seek out your early adopters. These are the people who will forgive not so stable server, a few typographical errors on your app or website. They forgive a lot as long as the solution solves the problem, and they would more than happily contribute, support, and do whatever they can to help you get stable. And once you get stable, they'll be more than happy to actually go out there and become your evangelist. So this is what you need to have in mind. You need to find that early, or that group of early adopters. And once you found them, cultivate that good relationship with them and see how you can bring them into, give them a little bit of this has played out in different ways, right? We've seen platforms basically actually set up a program to convert some of those early adopters into evangelists and incentivize them, give them, performance-based incentives to do things. Now, whether you choose to do that or not, when you have a minimum number of these evangelists who would form the fulcrum of your community, that is the minimum number that is required to actually begin to then layer in a lot more organic growth. Because once you hit that minimum baseline that is required, it becomes easy to hit momentum on any of the organic strategies that you want to implement, either in terms of virality, or in terms of loops, whatever it is that you choose to do. And they would more than happily support you and evangelize about your platform.
Thanks, Henry. How important is product market fit in relation to growth hacking, and how can startups balance the two?
Well, I'll make it very simple. Don't try to grow a startup that doesn't have PMF. It's literally going to be a waste of efforts. It's like pouring water into a basket. And I know that we all know this already, but the typically what I tend to see is founders know this, but when it's in actual fact, in daily life of living as a founder, you still find a way to convince yourself that actually, while I'm trying to do this, I can also be doing this because I want to see action, I want to see progress. And I want to tell you, all your attention should be focused on basically fixing the knowledge gap that is literally the reason why the growth doesn't exist, or the PMF doesn't exist rather. So don't try to grow when you don't have PMF. And when you have PMF, you wouldn't need anybody to tell you. You would know. You'd literally have early adopters knocking down your path, knocking down your door, and asking for more and more, and telling you, I want to share it to friends. Should I? Do I have your permission? Can I give this to my friends? Can I? Literally, it would be flowing. You would be the one trying to say, well, this isn't polished enough. Hold on, can I come back to you tomorrow? And they'll literally be like, nope, don't worry about it. Let's go now. So it's very important that you think about this from the point of view of your users and know that, because once again, let's go back to the basics of all advancement and progress in the business world. It's basically information gaps. You have to know something more than the next person, than your competitor, than the other players in the space. That's it. It's basically information gap. So your goal should be, how can I be the guy? How can I be the guy? How can I be the entity that has the most information in this space? And the most important information to have is basically around the jobs to be done for your customer. That's it. So if you're very early, irrespective of what stage you're in, let's say you're very, very early and you don't even have like a steady shape of what your customer segment is, that's fine. The prospective audience that you're exploring, try to know as much as possible about them, much more than any other person can. With that knowledge, you will transform your startup's journey.
So now that we know a bit about growth hacking, how would you track and measure the success of a growth hacking experiment?
Well, there are different ways to track and to measure. And what I'd say to everybody on the call is, if you're going to play the startup game and you're not measuring, then you're not ready. You haven't started, right? If you're going to play the startup game, in fact, if you're going to start a business, you have to measure. And as we always say, the two areas, the two most important parts of, you know, the data houses in any business is in the customer and product related pack, and of course finance. And those are so important that you absolutely, as the founder, have to be on top of both. So you must know your basics to the point that you can sleep and wake up and have the numbers. That's how much you must be obsessed with your numbers. Now, at the very simple, you know, basic level, depending on what you have, there are easy tracking attribution platforms and systems that you can deploy a solution. Technology for attribution is really advanced, and you can adapt it to fit with whatever it is that you're doing, and you know, just integrate it nicely. Now, in terms of what exactly to track, what exactly do you want to make sense of? What exactly do you want to measure? What exactly is a way to know that the numbers you're getting after you've successfully implemented the measurements and you're starting to collect the data? How do you now interpret the data? What is a comparative measurement that you can use and say, okay, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense? Well, that would be a very different conversation. I mean, it's another workshop in its own right. But what I'll leave us with is the concept of PMF, as I'd mentioned. When you're very early, that's the only thing that should matter. And so what you're tracking for is basically, how can I validate the most basic, the most fundamental of my assumptions around customer, the problem, the jobs they're trying to get done, and the realities of what they do on my product. So earlier when we were talking about churn, I also talked about retention, and I talked about the different types of churn, and I talked about the key building blocks of retention in terms of the engagements and stickiness. So these are some of the things that you want to measure. And if you have a churn rate where actually let's reverse it. Let's look at it from the retention part. If users sign up and almost immediately they don't use your app, there's a problem, right? And you have to try to understand where they came from and see if that gives you some insights into why they've behaved the way they've behaved. But at all times, you want to measure the behavior of your users within your product. So let's say they sign up, or let's say they sign up and they use the product for a brief period of time, then they stop. Then what you want to do is you want to find out why that is and how you can make that change, right? And so a lot of these fundamental questions of whys build up your knowledge in terms of the customer, and it helps you align whatever you validated outside the platform with what's actually happening on the platform. And as you get to the point where you fully align that, to the extent that you're able to align that, it would directly translate into the amount of growth or retention that you would achieve. Because once again, that is proof that you're translating knowledge that you're acquiring in terms of user behavior, and you know, as it relates to the problem they're facing, to actual behavior on your product to solve those same problems. So the key indicators would largely be dependent on the nature of your products. You know, different platforms would have indicators above all that help signals, activation signals, satisfaction with the platform. But bottom line is, in terms of metrics, you want to measure that, how many people are staying. You want to measure, how long it takes for the average person to churn. So some cohort analysis will be relevant as well. And you want to measure things like engagements and stickiness. You want to see how frequently they come in, and then you want to see what they do when they come in, how long they spend when they come in. And you want to look at that within cohorts as well as across board. So you want to be looking at overall, how long on average do people stay on your platform? And you want to see if that differs based on, different groups being either cohorts in terms of timelines or cohorts in terms of where they've come from. And this number, these insights and these learnings are all going to be contributing to your body of unique, exclusive intellectual property that will drive you all the way to the top.
Henry, there's 2 questions in the chat. I don't know if you have seen them yet.
I see. All right, there's actually 3. There's how to grow a marketplace from very early stage. And then as an online service company, we're currently developing products aligned with our services. How can we strategically build a growth-oriented team as a digital product company? And can you say, how can I increase visiting persons on our website page? Okay, how to grow a marketplace from very early stage. So this is a very good question. The challenge with growing a marketplace or a multi-sided platform is you're battling with chicken and egg, and it's a very big problem. You need to solve both sides, and you need to give the biggest value for both sides is really the other side. So demand wants demand. The demand wants supply, and supply needs demand. So demand wouldn't exist if there was no supply, and supply wouldn't come if there was no demand. So the approach we typically adopt is to try to solve for supply first, and once you get that sorted significantly, and the way that we solve for supply is there are different approaches you could take. You could try to solve a slightly adjacent problem for supply, but solve it on the platform such that you literally already house them on the platform, and then it becomes easy to basically at the click of a button unlock the other parts of their supply. But whatever the case is, you already are on your platform, and then you can unlock demand, more or less, right? And then for demand, what we tend to say as well is, if you've done a good job with optimizing supply, then demand would achieve a high level of satisfaction. But the way to actually give your marketplace a long-lasting growth is to solve for liquidity. Now, liquidity basically means how efficiently you're matching demand to supply, right? And this is the biggest. So once you beginning to achieve some level of satisfaction or PMF on your marketplace, the immediate priority becomes solving for liquidity. You want to, because if growth begins to happen quickly, what's likely to happen is either demand would outstrip supply, and then experience for demand begins to go really terrible, because now demand is literally struggling to attract the very minimal supply there is, or supply outstrips demand, and then experience for supply becomes really terrible because now there's not enough demand, and a lot of supply just come in and there's no demand at all, right? And so either way is not good for your platform. And those are I mean, I'm trying to give you something simplified that you can work with. There's a whole lot of nuances, a whole lot of other aspects of it that you need to think about. But fundamentally, when you take it, if you wanted a very simple 1-2 step process to take to grow your marketplace, this would be my recommendation. And for the second question, as an online service company, we're currently developing.
Actually, I want to add some context.
Yes, please go for it.
Actually, I am building a marketplace. It's a matchmaking marketplace, but I am facing a problem that uh, uh, when boys are trying to sign up, they are saying that, oh, there are not enough girls. And when girls are trying to sign up, and they're saying, oh, there are not enough boys. So you said the truth. It's a chicken and egg problem. But I have to go on. Can you now give me some specialized solution?
Well, so I could give you a few suggestions, but eventually the best way to find the right fit for you would be the market. The market would reveal itself to you. And you have to ask. Now, I'll give you a methodology that you could use to get the answers that you need. When you look at, so there are two approaches to take in terms of the marketplace. And in this case, we don't want to be sexist by assuming that one side is the supply and one side is the demand, even though depending on what the nature of the interaction is between the both parties, we can extrapolate to which side is the supply and which side is the demand, right? And so what you want to do is find a way to organize and optimize for supply, whoever supply is on your platform. And okay, let me do this. What is the purpose of the platform that you've built?
Actually, it's a matrimony matchmaking platform for specialized in Bangladeshi market. Bangladeshi market is a very conservative market in this place because most of the people are Muslim, and Muslim peoples are actually they are not using this platform. You can see that in Western countries, Tinder are very popular, but in Bangladeshi countries, here traditional dating site or is not so popular. So here matrimony matchmaking service is the only solution, and no other big player is growing so massively. It's a actually market problem, but we are trying to solve it such a way that we have tried a hack, and that's work. It's not a massive growth, but it works to gain some customer. Actually, we have blurred the photo, and when people have their privacy and then think, oh, if the photo is blurred, without my accept to request, no one can see my photo, then some people are agreed to join. So I hope you got it.
Yeah, no, I have an understanding, but I have a few more questions, and I'll tell you. I know that in the interest of time, there's probably a lot more questions, but here's what we can do. In terms of actually, let me ask you this. In terms of the dynamics between the genders, who needs to get married more, right? I mean, broadly speaking, you look at Tinder, for instance, Tinder and let's say Bumble, and you can literally say that to a certain extent, the females are more or less supply, and the males are the ones that are demanding for the supply, right? In that context, can we assume it's the same?
Yeah, actually, I have seen that because when I'm trying to run a Facebook ad with a very limited budget, more and more boys are coming, but less girls are coming.
Yeah, exactly. So what you want to do is you want to optimize supply. So your priority should be on the females. And the question is, how can you, there's a minimum baseline of a number of females that you need to have that will give you that momentum that you need with demand, right? If a lot of the males want to come in and they want to get married, so whatever it is that you're promising, I'm assuming that your platform is promising, you'll help them get married to the right person within a particular time frame. They'll find the right person for them. So you're doing some filtering or whatever you're doing to help match personalities and give them the best chance of finding the love of their lives. this is an assumption. So hypothetically speaking, if this is what you're doing, then it means you want to go drill deeper into the female and ask, what exactly would this mean for you, right? So before you talk about the males, before you run any ads, can I suggest to try and update your knowledge gap on the females first? So go back and talk to the females. Go talk to them, go understand what they are looking for, what they're trying to get, what the challenges are right now with regards to getting married. Or do they even have a challenge with getting married? Or is the challenge getting married to the right person? And how do they define the right person? Why is that important to them? Now, the reason this is important is as you expand your knowledge of this space, two things would happen. One is you would probably evolve your copy and the words that you use to attract them in the ads that you're running. But two, and probably most importantly, you will come to see a different approach that could work for the female. So you could decide, you know what, instead of actually running ads to tell them to come to the platform and be visible to be selected by men, maybe I want to run ads to tell them to come to the platform and they will get lessons or sessions or tutorials or something around being the perfect person to attract the perfect guy, being this, being that. And then you'd use the trainings, you use the sessions as a very good excuse to optimize supply, to attract a lot of women who are coming in not to put up their pictures and attract men now, but to actually better themselves in preparation for this life-changing event. But what happens is when you build up this number of females, suddenly you've got 1,000, 10,000 females on your platform. When you unlock advertising finally to the males and say, well, I've got some of the best, highest quality females and there's 10,000 of them, and there's a lot more on the wait list who want to come in. I've got supply figured out perfectly. You would see how effortless your demand will be. Your demand is going to grow so effortlessly, and you're going to be the one thinking, oh, okay, this is going too fast, because remember what we discussed about liquidity. So, but always go back to the basics and ask, this is a symptom of a knowledge gap. So go back and understand as much as you can about supply, the females, and use that, not transform and translate.
Okay, so improve supply.
Sorry, was somebody speaking? I think somebody said something now, but anyways, I know we're fast running out of time, so I'm just going to jump into the next startup. The next question here was, how can we build a growth-oriented team as a digital product company? Well, so growth-oriented team as a digital product company, that doesn't tell me much about what your company is doing. If you're saying you're a digital agency, then you're basically offering growth services. And so that's slightly different. But if this is a very vague question, so if you could drop some more notes to give me a little bit more clarity, I'll be able to better advise. On the next question, it says, how can I increase visiting persons in our website page? Well, why should people visit your website? Is your website valuable to who? Who is it valuable to? What does it say to them? What does it tell them? Have you tried to understand what they might be looking for, in what form they're looking for it? You have to answer these questions first. And when you do, everything becomes easy. You can build a website that basically just becomes easy. People stay on it longer. Even the search engines would see that your time on page is very good. They'd see that there is minimal, page churn, and they would reward you with even more search engine traffic, and you just find that traffic grows. But first, you have to go back to the basics. Why should they visit you? The next is, I have a handicraft startup business focusing on home decor products. How can I grow it faster? Oh, this is amazing. Handicraft startup business focusing on home decor products. Okay, so the question is, do you run a platform that aggregates home decor products from a lot of handicrafts, craftsmen and women, or are you yourself basically making handcrafts products and selling directly? Those are two different solutions. If you run a platform, you can take some of what I shared earlier about the marketplace and implement. But if you are the one actually selling the product that you've made yourself, then of course there are tactics that you can utilize to really bring yourself some attention. Remember what I said earlier as well. Find one channel. Don't try to go on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and tons of them. Find one. Look for those who are likely to appreciate home decor products, handmade home decor products, and ask them why. Ask them why this is important to them. Ask them what this represents for them, how it makes them feel, and use that to create ads and to reach out to those who are likely to want to buy on that one channel that you've chosen. That's your path to market. And hello, we're trying to create arts and culture research platform focusing on the untold and disappearing communities of our cities for global impact. Well, this is great. The one thing that I'll tell you, Shamim, is bias for action. Your language here says we are trying to create. I'd say jump into it. Get started. Get started. Don't overthink it. Get started. And if you're asking me what's the right place to start, knowledge gap. Go straight to the questions. Who are we creating it for? To what purpose? Why are they going to care about this? What value are they going to find of it and from it? What are we expecting them to do? Are we expecting them to consume it for the sake of what? What outcome is it going to get? And then go validate all the assumptions you make about these questions that I've asked. Validate as much of it, reach out to them, interview them, get as much insights, and translate this knowledge into building something. But get started, whatever you do. Okay, I think those are the questions in the chat. Back to you, Danny.
Thank you so much. I think we are out of time, but thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Henry, for answering them. If there's any other questions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you in a future session.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, everybody. And speak soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Dadu. Take care. Thank you, everybody.